Welcome to the show, everybody. It's the Crypto Lark coming at you from Token 2049 here in Hong Kong. Today I got to sit down with Brad. He is the head of global business development over at Dash, a cryptocurrency which needs a little introduction. Brad, welcome.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Now, the thing I want to start off with, what is evolution? So Dash Evolution is coming in the near future. Can you tell us what we can expect from that?
No, absolutely no. Thank you. Evolution is our next upgrade. We're looking at that right around the third quarter of this year. In short, I guess as the summary is, Dash Evolution is about really improving the user experience. I think we who are involved in cryptocurrency right now, we've gotten used to dealing with things like long cryptographic addresses or just basically the UX involved. I think it's safe to say our parents are probably not comfortable in that environment, and even some of our own peers that maybe aren't as interested. So one of the kind of key elements is Evolution will be putting those addresses behind the scenes. Realistically speaking, obviously extraordinarily important on the technology side, it's not really needed on a user side.
Yeah.
So what we're going to be doing is changing that such that with it behind the scenes, one will no longer, or rather one will transact based on buddy lists or names.
Yeah.
You know, I'll pay $100 to, you know, Joanne or Billy or mom, dad, etc. And thus again, make that a lot easier to transact. The second element as well is basically creating the environment for the production of decentralized applications or dApps.
Yeah.
And the way I kind of envision it is almost a Dash iTunes app store, if you will, insofar that you can have a place to buy your Dash because of integration with, say, broker services.
Yeah.
A place obviously to store your Dash because, well, it's a wallet after all. And then again, obviously working with partners to try to create those dApps. Such that obviously then people can spend their money within that environment as well.
Cool. Dash dApps.
That's it. Be pretty cool. Absolutely.
I like it. I like it. That sounds really cool. Obviously, user experience is a really important part of this equation because, yeah, I mean, we've all been there. We've all had to buy our first Bitcoin, and it's a tough process.
Yep.
Even to figure out how to buy your first one. And then you go, okay, how do I send this? What's this crazy address thing? Right? And if you make one little mistake or whatever, well,
Gone.
That's
exactly
it.
Right.
That's it. So, I guess my next question for you would be, what is the problem of being your own bank?
I think, yeah, that's a really good, I mean, clearly there's a lot of advantages, but, I think some of the challenges with being kind of your own bank in that sense is, well, let's face it, today, you can't spend crypto everywhere. So if you are your own bank insofar that you're only with crypto, it takes a lot more effort.
Yeah.
If one is willing to put in those types of efforts, I think it is possible. But I think, realistically, where is cryptocurrency as far as on that mainstream scale? We're still in the very, very early stages. So the difficulty in I guess, that transaction process, being able to pay bills. Certain markets like Australia, I can pay bills directly in crypto and specifically Dash. But that's one challenge. I think the other is also, depending on the person, this is and again, for us in the crypto world, this is a risk we're comfortable with, but just conceptually being your own bank, one mistake and all your money's gone. Mm-hmm. Is that a problem? Not necessarily. Obviously, if you don't screw up, it's not a problem. But it's a risk though that of course one has to consider. At the same time.
That's the thing, is that there's no bank you can call and say, "Hey, I did something wrong. Can you help me?"
Yep. No 1-800 number.
That's right.
Exactly right.
Which is, again, it's a bonus, and it's also something you have to be aware of. How does Dash become a major payment player? Bitcoin right now, they're trying to scale with Lightning Network, and I know that Dash recently had, maybe it was 2 months ago or something like this, had a vote to actually reduce fees. Mm-hmm. And so you guys are working on it a bit, but what are the steps moving forward? How do you make Dash into, the PayPal of crypto, so to speak?
Absolutely. I think it's probably at a couple levels. On the technology side, because you kind of touched upon that, you're right, it was last year voting on both reducing fees, and I believe it was within about 24 or so hours, the network voted to go to 2 megabyte block size. So the governance...
Just like that, didn't take years like with Bitcoin.
Exactly. I didn't say it, but joking aside, that governance structure sets us up to take advantage of becoming that major player.
Yeah.
So it's still, obviously, as I mentioned before, we're still early in this space as far as cryptocurrencies. That right off the bat, and the results that's already shown around the fees and again the block size, that will be important because again scalability will be a concern. But any sort of technological development or changes or adjustments or pivots that might be needed, that governance structure allows us then to take advantage, again, pivot on that very quickly.
Yeah.
The other element still kind of on that technology side is, okay, well, great, we can vote for it, but where is this technology, for lack of a better word, coming from? So Dash is actually partnered with Arizona State University within their blockchain research laboratory to explore and test, new ideas, new thoughts, new theories around, okay, how can we increase scalability? How can we go to gigabyte block sizes? And some of those kind of more conceptual thoughts and testing that out.
Yeah.
So being involved kind of in that research side of things is also very important too. The flip side then is, again, around the business development. Of course, okay, we can do all this really cool stuff on the tech. You got to still find places to use it. Still got to find places, that provide valuable goods and services, for our users. We have 4 customers that we have to maintain. We have our users, of course. We do have our merchant partners, business partners, and then of course the developers as well. So while I'm obviously focusing on the biz dev side, the merchant partners and business partners, collectively as an organization, we also have to make sure that we are servicing the needs of those 4 customers to again achieve that larger growth. But that's kind of high level as far as how I kind of see us moving forward.
Yeah, I understand the challenge in trying to get a merchant to accept Dash, because the current reality of the crypto market is that, okay, we accept Dash at 11 p.m. for a payment, wake up to go to the bank in the morning, and it's gone down by 10%. And so now we've lost 10% on our sales. So how do you overcome that with businesses? And what's your sales pitch to them to say, hey, accepting crypto is a good idea?
Very good question. So volatility, I think, for us in our lens, we're fortunate enough to live in wealthier countries. Volatility is a disincentive for us to transact, right? Who wants to be the 10,000 Bitcoin pizza guy?
Yeah. Poor guy.
Yeah, exactly, right? I think he was the first transaction on Lightning Network, I think. I read
Yeah,
somewhere.
he was also.
But, so, I guess he got a little bit of props.
He was a believer in it.
Exactly.
But still.
But, joking aside, so for us, okay, disincentive. If we put the lens on of someone who's living in Venezuela, as an example, or any sort of similar market, say like in Zimbabwe, where basically your national fiat, through inflation, through all the additional economic challenges of that market, the national fiat's more volatile than a lot of cryptocurrencies. And so when you flip the paradigm on that other side, you do see, and it's grassroots, again, it's growing, but you do see, growing adoption in those type of markets, growing interest to want to move into that space and to create again, those environments, ecosystems where, people can then spend Dash and hopefully get to a point where they're also earning Dash. And so keeping it, again, kind of closed loop. That's one element. More practically, day to day, volatility also, say if you are a merchant partner, you know what, volatility, don't want to deal with it. There are other solutions where brokers or other, payment providers will convert that crypto payment immediately into fiat. And thus, for at least that merchant, it's solving that volatility piece. So they're not holding the crypto, but at least they're still facilitating that payment. Their customer is still making that payment.
And they're, of course, saving their bottom line because they're not using credit card services, which are taking 2 or 3%. They're not having to wait a month to 2 months for the payment to clear.
That's exactly it. So most credit card payments, can be anywhere from a 24 to 72-hour settlement. We settle right now in about, in a couple of minutes. I mean, instant transaction, but then to be able to transact that immediately after. So we settle with the merchant, in that 2 to 3 minutes versus 24 to 72 hours.
Yeah.
So massive difference there. To your point as well, the credit card fees versus what it costs, say, for an instant transaction, which would be about 4 US cents right now. The flip side, though, is not every market does the merchant actually pay for those merchant fees. So it is a slightly different use case, for example, than in something like Australia, where it's often, not always, but often it's the consumer that's paying that merchant fee. So one would go up to say, use a US analogy, let's say a Best Buy, and you would see, okay, your price is X dollars. You will be charged 1.9% for Visa, MasterCard. You will be charged, a little bit more if it's, Amex or Discover card.
Yeah.
But imagine, though, again, if it's or, you'll pay 4 US cents if it's Dash. From a consumer point of view, even now, that is easily relatable.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm buying a $1,000 TV. Now, okay, there's some, dollars and cents here that start to make sense, and
That's
maybe
it.
we'll transact that way. So, slightly different use cases, but the speed, the low cost is one of the primary values.
Yeah, that's really awesome, and it's money talks at the end of the day. And when you can go to people and say, well, hey, you're gonna buy a $1,000 TV, it's gonna cost you $20 to buy it with Visa. Either you're gonna have to pay it, or the merchant's gonna have to pay that $20, or
4 US cents.
or 4 cents.
Exactly,
it's a crazy
right.
opportunity. And I think the thing that often gets forgotten in this conversation of volatility is that it's also can go up. And so merchants can think, well, except Dash, maybe I take a long term, maybe we really like Dash, maybe we think that in 5 years, having this little pile of Dash over here is going to be a massive asset for our company. And so that's something that people don't often think about. But I think about, like, hey, if I'm going to be a merchant accepting cryptocurrency, it's probably because I want to be hodling cryptocurrency, And so there's that category of people too, not just the guys who are, well, we're going to save a lot of money. We could also have this as a strategic asset moving forward.
Very true as well. Now, and ultimately, the merchant at least gets to make that decision, him or herself.
That's it. And of course, you brought up a great point about Venezuela as well. The ability for cryptocurrencies to let these people move around currency controls of the country and things like this. Not, of course, to mention that, well, if Dash goes down 5% tomorrow, probably better than Bolivar. That's
exactly.
it.
But and you still bring up a good point, even broader, say, than Venezuela is really around the remittance market, which is an area of course, strong focus for us. Right now, the remittance market is tough. If one is generally speaking, a lot of times it's individuals who are maybe in, more lower paying type of a job, who are then, of course, sending it back to where they have, family or friends, back in their home country. A lot of solutions available out there, without kind of naming names, but, even those percentages, even if you're spending $15, $25, if you're only going to send $100, all of a sudden that $15 is a 15% fee. And again, given the economic environment, the type of, I guess, financial situation stereotyping that most of them though are in, that really does add up.
Yeah.
That's where again Dash can play a very strong role. Right off the bat, 4 US cents again to transact. $15, I mean, it's a no-brainer as comparing those two costs. The flip side additionally is that depending on how one is remitting money between country A and B, if it's a wire, it could take weeks, theoretically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even a lot of the newer ones are still around, even a 24-hour turnaround, okay, that's great compared to again, a wire, or instant. I mean, it's still, though, the speed at which Dash can be sent is a very strong advantage, because then you can also be in situations where maybe, heaven forbid, someone does need money for an emergency.
Yeah.
Well, pull out from a mobile phone, so they're not going to say a convenience store or somewhere else to
hoping that it's open at the hour that you need it.
100%, right? Nope. Pull out the mobile phone, boom, sent it, and their family member has that money almost instantly.
That's powerful stuff, and again, something we forget about, in the first world countries sometimes. Oh, I just got my credit card, and these people don't have banks, and that's a huge percentage of the global population. So this is important to remember. Now, we're in Asia right now. We're in Hong Kong. Hong Kong has a lot of migrant workers. Do you see a lot of use cases outside of perhaps the remittance market here in Asia for Dash?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Asia is an area where, maybe historically we haven't put as strong of an emphasis on. I think moving forward, it definitely is an area of an intense interest. So right off the bat, remittances. Even though very, very relevant to your point, Hong Kong and all throughout the market. Philippines, for example, is really attractive to me. Remittance element there as well, but when you look at the market as a whole, if one lived in Philippines, you could actually take out an American Express credit card in USD. What that, if we sit on that for a moment, what does that mean? That means that the paradigm of using a form of payment or a currency that is different from the national fiat has already been bridged and crossed within the Philippine market. They are used to, not everyone, I mean, but American Express card, let's face it, that's not going to be for the average Joe in the market necessarily, but the point is conceptually that bridge has already kind of been crossed.
That's true.
So Philippines, I do see a strong market, and again, that remittance, being able to provide that benefit back to the market as well is huge. You look at India, so their government made a very large decree that said we want to move people into the banking system, move them off of cash. That's a perfect case for cryptocurrency at large, and of course Dash specifically. So again, very, very interesting market. Just two examples. I mean, obviously, not to take away from the other markets, but they all have, I think, key elements such as that again, China from a scale perspective. You've got Japan from a level of advancement as opposed, at the way, I guess, call it, I don't necessarily want to say mainstream, but they are probably the more mainstream than say other markets with respect to crypto awareness, etc. So
probably a lot more likely to find more brick and mortar shops in Japan actually accepting crypto.
100%, absolutely right. So all of the markets, I think, offer a lot of opportunity, just slightly different ways.
Awesome. And I guess to wrap up, where do you see crypto moving in the next 10 years, for example?
Oh, wow. That's well, if I really knew the answer to that, man, I would be, that would be great, right? Anyone's guess, right? I think I see a couple of things. Look, I know a lot of people don't like it, The reality is, I think we need to sit back and accept regulation's coming. It's coming in some form or another. The most dangerous thing, I think, for us in the crypto space is to ignore it or basically not work with the regulators. I think it's very important for us to have a seat at the table. First of all, to educate them.
Yeah.
You hear comments where, we're not going to do crypto because Bitcoin's anonymous. Well, okay, what?
Yeah.
Time out. Okay, so if that's, but we're laughing a little bit, but reality is that's the mainstream understanding.
Yeah.
So, it's also this opportunity where if we're not at the seat at the table, then we're going to have regulations imposed on us that make zero sense because it's being written by people that haven't had that education and awareness. So again, how do we move forward with that and again, help shape that in a way, that works. That I think is really important. That's something I think that's coming, within, much sooner, to be fair, than 10 years.
But it'll be developing, I think, over those sort of next decade.
That's a good point.
They try things, they respond to things, well, maybe that didn't work, maybe we came down too hard here, we didn't come down hard enough there, and you'll see a bit of this as they try and get their feet wet and figure out just what to do with all this, I guess.
100% agree. You're right. It will be something that'll be fine-tuned. It's not a written in stone, as it were, at a certain point. The other element is I do see a lot more, I'm hopeful, again, we are small now, there's a lot of, we being the industry, but, I'm bullish that crypto will be more mainstream. I think in 10 years, there will be that familiarity at the, call it again, the average, average Jane, the average Joe level of how do, they have their wallet, they transact with it, or with other utility coins, maybe for other different purposes. But I do see that within that 10-year time frame, it might actually take us even that long to really get to be mainstream. Again, UX, that's coming, earlier on, but clearly 10 years from now, I would see it being a lot more frictionless. When we think about even, .com era, I think provides us with a lot of good analogies for what we might think in 10 years. So thinking about back in the day, the concept of a free email address even was you had to be paying for an internet service provider. I remember when Juno first came out, and that was the first free email, but you had to watch ads on it. Now, fast forward today, how strange and archaic was that landscape? all of that, I think, again, shows, the type of advancement that we might see within crypto within those 10 years. I think the other aspect is, and this is unfortunate, but there will be projects that fail. There'll be projects that will merge. I think you'll see failures, mergers, acquisitions, and also new projects growing up.
Things we haven't even thought about yet are going to come out in 3 or 4 years. Like, wow, why didn't we think of that 3 or 4 years ago? That was a great idea.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, 10 years from now, what happens with quantum computing? I mean, where are we at on that level? I mean, I've heard so many different, I guess, really guesses on when that could be more practical. But the reality is okay, well, that will change cryptocurrency on many levels. What level? Who knows? But again, that type of powerful computing, how does cryptocurrency react to that? That'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, it'll be an interesting space. I mean, that's definitely for sure. It'll be a roller coaster, but it'll be a fun ride.
And I think the most important thing is, guys, buy the ticket, take the ride, get involved.
Absolutely, definitely.
Brad, this has been a lot of fun.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.